Okay. Where should we begin?
Maybe the detransition stuff. That might
Okay.
be a good place.
Well,
Yeah,
before you
so
detransition, you have to transition, right?
right. And
And before
so
you
let's start with that.
transition, something probably was
Uh-huh.
going on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, it started, I'd probably say it started when my parents got divorced when I was 5 years old. And so then I was like, I struggled with depression and mental health issues after that point. And then I guess I can say like that I had some trauma around my sexuality and womanhood in sixth grade. And then from there, I ended up becoming a pescatarian, which my depression worsened after that. So I was just eating fish. And then from there, I went into women's studies. And so that's when I was introduced to the idea that there's like a non-binary gender. And then I saw a therapist in 2016, and it should have been a red flag because she believed in otherkin. But yeah, so I saw her, and she affirmed she was like a gender affirming therapist, and she we talked about it and decided that I was non-binary, and then um, in August of 2020, I ended up getting top surgery because I had thought I was non-binary since 2016. And then I got the surgery and I developed a whole bunch of health complications from it. And then after I developed the complications, my doctors took me seriously at first, but then they started becoming dismissive once they thought that I had psychosomatic fever. And then
What's psychosomatic fever? That sounds like a dance move.
yeah. So psychosomatic fever is when um you actually, it sounds like from my understanding that you have an actual fever, but it's caused from like mental illness or something like that. That's from my understanding. So there is actually a physical component, and my doctors never did check me for that fever, like for an actual fever, because I know I checked myself and I was like my temperature was fine. So yeah, it was never, I never had psychosomatic fever, but that I noticed like there was a shift in their attitude once they thought I had that diagnosis. And then from there, I ended up having to try. I went down like a holistic health approach because I was like, well, I have these physical health issues and my doctors aren't doing anything about it. Like, I need to figure this out. And then I was surprised that once I addressed my physical health issues, my mental health got better, which is something I
Okay.
was never expecting. And then I realized that I was never non-binary as a woman the whole time, and I was dealing with trauma and I had underlying health issues that my doctors had never addressed. So that's pretty much my backstory.
Yeah. So why would you, sorry, why would you want your breasts removed?
Yeah, so
That just
I
seems like an
had,
extreme step.
I know, right? And I mean, the whole thing, like thinking back on it now, even just like that my doctors and my surgeon approved of a non-binary surgery and that Medicaid considered it a medical necessity is like crazy. Um, but like I had a lot of discomfort around my breasts, and that I believe it was due to the trauma because like once my mental health got better, like that discomfort, because I it wasn't just my breast, like I also had discomfort around my hips as well, because like there is some femininity kind of, or like vulnerability around the hip area as well. And so once I addressed the physical health issues, the discomfort with my hips went away as well.
Okay. But why
Mhm.
are you discomforted by your body? Is it like self
Mhm.
perception? Like you'd see a reflection in the window or something? And,
It
or
was
the way it moves or what? Like,
it was a little bit visual as well because like I didn't want that, like I just wanted to be flat. I wanted to be androgynous back then.
yeah.
But there was an actual physical discomfort as well. So I actually had like this sort of like almost like rejection of that. Like it just felt wrong. Like it actually, like there was like a physical sensation to it as well.
Huh.
Hmm.
Like you'd wake up and you're like, why are these things on me? Like, get them off of me.
Kind of like definitely like when I was walking and stuff like that, I could feel them, and then it would remind me, oh, I have breast or whatever, and I was like, I didn't want them. It was just sort of like I tried to wear like sports bras to kind of like hide them as much as possible. So it was just sort of a rejection of that part.
So is there like an underlying symbolic tension there? Like you don't want to be a woman because woman means something, or to the world or to you?
Yeah, I think so. I think that part of it was symbolic that I didn't want to be a woman, but I also really didn't want to be a man. So it was really, I wanted to be something in between because that was like a sort of freedom, but it was never really a freedom. But I thought
Okay.
that it was sort of like, well, I'll be happy once I achieve this, if that
Okay.
makes any sense.
Okay. Okay.
Hmm.
Uh, so one theme that I hear is I want, I don't want, I want, I don't want.
Hmm.
That's kind of
Hmm.
a cultural thing. It's a very American thing. Like you know, your body's like a Whopper, and it's your way right away, right? Like what's that about? And have you thought about the role of like what people want in the world and what they deserve and their rights as a human being to
Hmm.
transcend their sex characteristics or something?
Yeah, I think that it's more of like because this is something that I remember back from when I was in women's studies was that one of my professors was highly implying that we were depressed because of sexism. So there's this sort of like you're being sold this idea that well you're miserable because of transphobia, because of racism, because of sexism. Like that is the core reason
Okay.
why you're upset rather than well depression's really complicated. Like let's talk about this and then you also have this sort of ideology that's very cult like and that, is very
Yeah.
there's a lot of unstable there's a lack of stability like mental stability within that culture as well. So it's like it's sadly it's like I think that a lot of people including myself went into it because we were suffering and we wanted to help other people who were suffering, and then we were like but then it's just like this whole ideology is very patronizing and it's just not helpful.
Yeah. Well, it's like all these people who are unhappy, struggling for happiness, but
Mhm.
obsessing over unhappiness, obsessing over suffering, right?
Right.
And then getting caught up in
Hmm.
that. And so the suffering that you became obsessed with was directed towards your sex, towards your
Yeah.
womanhood. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so, and then you went to a therapist because you're getting more and more unhappy. You went to a therapist. So, and it sounds, what was the relationship with this other Kenny therapist? Like, what would you guys talk about? How would she approach you?
She
Sorry,
was
I gendered
very
her. She's probably a they at this point.
I don't know. I think she's still she, but um yeah, I mean she was definitely in that ideology as well. So there was like this I mean, and that's part of the problem is that there's no like when it comes to gender affirming care, like there's no like critique of it because the idea is too is that, you must be non-binary because we used to think gay was a form of mental illness. So I mean that's the sort of correlations they make. Like and I've had
Yeah.
two different therapists say that to me. So um
Huh.
yeah.
We used to think
But
being
yeah.
gay was a mental illness, so now we're going to make up new things to accept.
Yeah.
Is sounds like a mental illness itself. Or at least very
Yeah.
unhealthy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely not it's not like it's like weird because like they address it like that it's critical thinking, but it's really not because like it's like you really only can think critically or think in a certain way within a certain framework. And when you go outside that framework, like you say, well, maybe non-binary is a form of mental illness, or there's something like weird that you can't actually transition to a third gender. like, right? Like there is no biological equivalent to non-binary. Like there,
Yeah.
you can't, it's just, it's one of those things that once you kind of like bring those points up, like then the cognitive dissonance kicks in and they keep like, they'll like make excuses for it because it's like, it's holes in their ideology,
Yeah.
really.
Did you have
Hmm.
any other frame of reference growing, like even from your
Hmm.
past, like church groups or chess club or something like that, where people thought differently or did things differently?
It's interesting because I grew up in the 90s, and so it was very different than it is now. And like the gender ideology hadn't hit really until like I got into college in around 2010. So like, but still, like even like I mean, I was like in the Portland area, so even though I was like going to a Catholic school when I grew up, um, it was still very liberal. Like, I mean, we were talking about the gay rights movement back in like when I was in grade school. So like it was still I was still in a very liberal pocket, and so that probably exposed me to a lot of these ideas. Or like I was more susceptible to a lot of these ideas in the first place.
So how far along did you go with the studying Catholicism itself? Did you ever participate in that?
Yeah, I had a bad experience with the teacher in grade school, and so I didn't like it just like destroyed my confidence because what had happened was that she had like I forgot my homework because I was ADHD, and I had to be sent back to the second grade classroom, and my teacher I was sitting in the class doing the homework, and this teacher who had been emotionally abusive the year before, when I was in second grade, had said like, "This is what a stupid kid looks like," and so she said this in front of the whole entire class, and it's just like all my interactions with her like destroyed my confidence at that point. I think too, it's just like I wasn't emotionally stable enough. Like now that I've stabilized emotionally, I know that like diet's really important, that that there's other holistic things that I've done that to really help stabilize me. But like back then, I don't think I was in a place to handle something like that.
Did you have a supportive family life?
I did like like my dad and my stepmom were very supportive of me growing up. I know like when I fell into depression, like towards the end of let's see here, towards the end of high school, then they weren't as supportive of me. Like they said, you've seen too many therapists, and I knew I needed help with something. And so that's when I turned to feminism, like when I went to college the next year.
Okay.
And so it was just like I just really needed something.
Yeah.
And that was kind of what was available to me was the ideology.
Huh. Feminism as an ideology, not as like a rights movement, but
Oh,
a worldview.
oh, I guess I should say like that was when I was introduced to like I started doing woman studies classes,
Yeah.
and that's when I was introduced to more. It was more the really dogmatic ideology that we were seeing back then in 2010.
And did you, if you could recall, what was your attitude towards this dogma? Was it like, oh, cool, or like, oh,
Yeah.
finally, or what?
So I remember that once I started woman studies, like I was really good at it because I had sort of that, I think, abstract thinking, which is what I see a lot in those types of circles. Like it's sort of like you can like, I think that what a great example is there's somebody on Tumblr and they're talking about like how straight white teeth is oppressive. So it was like, it's sort of like no, straight white teeth are actually a good and they mean you're healthy. Like, you look at cultures that aren't introduced to like a modern diet and they have straight white teeth because that's a good thing. So, it's just sort of like sometimes the curtains are just red. They don't mean murder. They don't mean blood. They don't, it's
Yeah.
just,
But
yeah,
you
that
were
was something
good
yeah.
at reading into things then.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And sort of, and I think it's sort of like, and I imagine a lot of these like people who like are drawn to these ideologies are probably more creative people and to kind of see things abstractly. But unfortunately, it's not a healthy way to approach life or like relationships or really anything else for that matter.
Well, I mean, it's the dominant ideology, so it can't be all bad.
Mm. Yeah, I don't think it is good though.
Huh.
Just like from what I've seen, like how I seen like what it does to people, I think is the worst part. Like I know like I was in a group and I was telling a Gilbert Gottfried joke. And
Are you gonna do his voice?
yes, I'll do his voice. so he's what's happening in this video, it's like a college humor skit. And what he does is that it's Gilbert Gottfried, the voice of Iago reading 50 Shades of Grey. And so like he's doing like the audio book and these women are listening to this audio book and he's going like inner goddess and then he's just like saying these things and these women are like, oh my god, like ugh like they're just mortified. And then he goes he'll say things like clitoris. It's just like the most horrible reading of like this book. And it's and then like these women are absolutely disgusted and the last woman is like sitting in it like she's waiting at a doctor's appointment and she goes, oh, that is so hot. Like she's just like totally like on the opposite end of that. And I remember like the whole group laughed except this one person. And they were like, well, he's an asshole, right? And like the whole group fell silent.
Yeah.
It's just like that much power over everybody else just by saying like, and it wasn't even that they had an issue with the joke itself.
Yeah.
It was that Gilbert Gottfried had told that joke. It's just like, it's not even that. It's just like you can never be perfect within like that sort of ideology because it's not even like, to like, yeah, it's just you can never be perfect and it's so easy to get canceled and it's just not.
Yeah.
It's not constructive for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it enables female typical relational aggression, judging, character assassination, reputational damage, management. So it's a really, it just facilitates that. It's like almost built out of that way of thinking. But, it's dressed up as we're going to save the world by condemning the world to 1,000 paper cuts of petty grievances, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So what about like relationships that you have? Like, were you interested in boys, girls? Did you have like, as you're growing up, like finding different things to stabilize you, friendships, besties, boyfriends, girlfriends, stuff like that?
Right.
Were you able to plug into people, your peers?
I had like this crush on this boy in 5th grade and like, and I liked, it was kind of like, it was sweet because like, he ended up leaving to another school, but it was just like, we went to the dance or like at the dance, I asked him to dance and we danced together and stuff. And I think that it went really like, it was just nice, like, because like, it was never anything serious. Like we didn't talk that much because he ended up leaving like half the year in. So yeah. I didn't know him that well, but it's sort of like, I'd go to these school dances, I'd dance with boys. It was never an issue. And then what happened was that in 6th grade, this thing had happened. My best friend had been raped by her brother. And around the same time, my dad was also telling me, like, this is how men my age talk about girls your age sexually. And so my dad was scared about me dressing provocatively, even though, like, I had no interest in that. And so it was like, that is when things shifted, like around me and relationships with men and like boys. And like, I remember like even like when I liked somebody, like back when I was in grade school, like I could approach that boy and ask him to dance, or approach a boy and ask him to dance at the dance. You know, when I went into high school, I ended up not like I would get so nervous that like I just couldn't function. Like it was like, and it never went away. Like, you know, like you get butterflies in your stomach and that goes away. It actually, I think that that's the time I developed generalized anxiety disorder. Like I don't think I had it previously to that. Like I think I had anxiety, but like it unfortunately impacted my relationships after that.
So that generalized anxiety, are you saying that that kind of came from your thoughts about boys or your fears around the males? And then just kind of
I
grew
believe
and morphed
so.
to eat up everything?
Yeah, I think it was just like my body couldn't handle it, like
Huh.
for whatever reason.
Okay. And this is the time you're going through puberty too. So a lot of your
Right.
anxiety is pronounced while your body's doing this stuff. And so I could see later on you would start to really dislike the body because somehow you're that these body parts, your hips, your breasts, are imprinted with that anxiety. When they arose, the anxiety arose.
That and I think that the other thing that might have impacted it as well is that I ended up having like very heavy irregular periods and stuff during that time. And so like I probably had some endocrine system issues. And I remember going to a doctor being like, okay, could we look into this? And that the doctors said that they wouldn't cover the labs. And I don't know if I had known about an endocrinologist or my parents had known about an endocrinologist. Maybe I could have seen somebody back then. But I've known since now doing like these holistic health treatments, like my periods are normal, I don't get cramps anymore, and they're fairly regular. So, I mean, which is great. You know, it's like I mean, it's a pain to get cramps. So,
I assume so, but what do I know?
yeah, right. Yeah,
And the ADHD,
yeah.
can we step away from the label and just kind of describe what that label means to you and how you coped with that?
Yeah, so for me, part of it was that emotional dysregulation as well, because I had it like the thing was that, well, it can be a little bit of emotional dysregulation, but what was it? I've because I was diagnosed with ADHD back when I was like 6 or 7. So like I was one of those kids that was very obviously ADHD. Like there's like no hiding that I had ADHD. But
In what way?
like I mean I was like hyper like I was like kind of like hyperactive. Like I was like I would hide under desks and stuff like that. Like I was doing kid stuff, but it was also just like I mean like when I would get a homework assignment, I was spending like you know, like I think kids get their homework assignments done fairly quickly, but like I mean I would be spending the whole night doing like homework. And like my mom would tell me about like how I guess like how like you know it just like I guess to her it wasn't normal versus like my brother because I do have a sibling and I guess he got it on time. So that I just like I'd forget papers, you know, like homework assignments and stuff like that. Like I was super disorganized. Like I was just like I had like a binder and it just like papers were like everywhere and
Yeah.
well not everywhere, but it's just like I just had like I could not organize myself as a kid for sure. But yeah, I mean that's kind of like the main things of how it impacted me for sure.
And as you age, do you cope better with that?
I didn't cope as well. Like when I got older, things actually got like worse in college. And then like then I had like the CPTSD from the activist circles. So I ended up getting to a point where like I just like my anxiety would get so bad that like I'd just be on the computer just to kind of like try and like all day
Okay.
just trying to like mitigate the anxiety. So it's just like I was very dysfunctional and I
What would you do on the
you know
computer to mitigate your anxiety?
just like watch YouTube videos, like
Okay.
watch something happy and you know like dog videos or something and
Okay.
you know, I was trying to like calm it down, but it was just, you know, and I'd done like and I was doing therapy at this point too. Like once, like when I did the top surgery, I had done about 20 years of traditional talk therapy, including like
Yeah.
DBT, which is like dialectical behavior therapy. I'd done, let's see here, I had done EMDR, which is like common for like PTSD, and then, hypnotherapy, somatic experiencing. So I'd done like different modalities within the traditional therapy like model. And I didn't respond well to medications, so like I couldn't take medications. And yeah, and I had also done like 2 rounds of transcranial magnetic stimulation therapy. So I'd really done everything at that point that conventional medicine and conventional therapy had to offer.
What about mushrooms?
Mushrooms. I had not done mushrooms. I didn't know. Like, it's kind of interesting because, like, once I developed all these health complications from the surgery, I found out about, like, mushrooms,
Yeah.
like, about, like, body work, hyperbaric oxygen therapy, diet. Like, these are things, like, I never heard of until, like, it's almost like you need, like, that sort of gateway. And then once you get in there, then you, like, hear about all these other treatments out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think? See, it sounds like you've been in therapy since you were a child, like a child. Do you think
Right.
it's good for somebody to do decades and decades of therapy?
No. No, I don't. I don't think it's good. I think part of that too was that what I really needed was like when I became pescatarian, because like I was a pescatarian for 10 years.
Was this like a fashion statement, or why pescatarian?
Like I was a pescatarian because like I read like the book about like how animals were treated, and so then I became like I started eating fish.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so I started eating fish, and that's when my health started deteriorating, and I didn't realize that at the time because we have such a I feel like in this culture we have a disconnect with our food of like, oh yeah, you actually need to eat meat. And so like once I started eating meat again, I did feel better. And then after I started feeling better after eating meat, then I started like cutting out more things to like improve my health. But it's just like what I really needed was to address my physical health issues, like eat a healthy diet, cut out processed foods. The diet includes eating meat. Earthing has helped me, like, which is like,
Earthing?
yeah. So earthing is like you have like a grounding, like you can do it outside.
Will you plow?
But oh no, not that earthing, but like the earthing, like where you like you stand on the ground, and I think it's like negative ions or something. Like there's something about it, but they did a study, and it was like the inflammation did go down, like in the study, and so
By
I mean
standing
I think I
on the
did
ground? Where else would you stand?
well. Like let's see here. So you stand on the ground, and then you'd have to do it long enough for the inflammation to go down, but
Well, like on
yeah,
the
it's
earth? Like, so you take off your
yeah,
socks and
yeah,
shoes
yeah.
and,
So the
and you
earth,
stand on a patch of grass. Okay.
yeah, that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's like something called the earthing movie. I know it sounds crazy, but it's like legit. Like I did earthing for like 3 days. Like, well, it was technically grounding because you can do it like with a grounding wrist. Like, okay, so anti-static wrist, plugged
Okay.
it into the outlet, and then I
Oh,
did it like 3 days. And then like I was like I woke up the next day. I was like, oh, I'm going to lower my sertraline dose by a half. So
your what dose?
sertraline.
What's that?
Oh, sertraline. It's like an antidepressant.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So what? Yeah.
It's not an herbal remedy like spirulina or something. It's a
No. Yeah, this
medical. Okay.
unfortunately, like after the surgery, they put me on sertraline, and I had a rash to it, so I did not react well to it. But my doctors put me on it and told me to keep taking it
Why?
because they didn't know what else to do. They didn't know what else to do with me at that point because this is like when I developed the complications.
Okay.
Yeah.
What general complications are we talking about? Back pain, inflammation?
Oh yeah. Yeah, so the complications I developed was after the surgery, I developed Raynaud's. I developed tinnitus. Let's see here. Raynaud's, tinnitus.
And what's
Bony
Raynaud's?
prominences. Oh,
Bony
Raynaud's is like,
prominences. I'm sorry, I just have to say these
yeah.
words along with you.
Okay. Yeah, so bony prominences. So this was the bony prominence. Like these, my knuckle got bigger. It's kind of weird. Like if you can notice, like that was after the surgery,
Okay. Well,
never
now you can get in
before.
bar fights and win.
Right? Yeah, so I should try that. Um, let's see here.
It's a form
So
of
yeah,
grounding,
yeah.
but it's a little bit more active.
Well, if the other person's on the ground, then maybe like if I punch them, then I can also get that grounding benefit. Yeah, so it would be like a
Transference.
cycle. So I forgot what we were talking about. So we
Raynaud's.
had the Raynaud's, yes. So your capillaries shrink and you have like discoloration and stuff. Oh yeah, your capillaries shrink on your extremities, and then yeah, you have discoloration and you like more sensitive to cold,
Yeah.
and so yeah, so I developed that. I had like skin discoloration issues after the surgery. Yeah, it's just
Did
like
did the
yeah.
did the site of the surgery heal itself?
It healed like I had some like some gnarly scars on the one side, but on the most part it healed fairly well.
Okay.
So like I didn't like have any like complications from the surgical site per se, but
Do you think
yeah, it was
that
just
it's like
mhm.
this? Your immune system was just punched by having to do that much healing, and then all these other
Mhm.
complications. Why do you think that this thing would lead to these other things?
Yeah, it's very odd for sure. I think part of it might have been a nervous system issue. Because like I was like my anxiety got really bad during that time too. So I think that part of it may have been like a nervous system issue. And then yeah, it was but I have talked to people who do body work or like particularly scar work and they like work on the scars and like there are like health issues that seem to like resolve themselves once they work on the scars. So I
Huh.
don't know what it is. It's like once the scars grab hold of that healthy tissue, it sounds like there's a potential for like other health complications to arise. But
Huh.
nobody's like really looking into that much. And most likely not and conventional medicine especially wouldn't look into something like that.
Okay, so back to the doctors. So they went
Hmm.
ahead and removed your breast tissue
Right.
because there was a diagnosis of NB-hood or what? Like you were non-binary, that
Yeah.
was your diagnosis, and so the remedy to that was to remove your breasts. Did they put you on any other
Hmm.
drugs like testosterone or anti-estrogen stuff?
No, I never wanted to be on testosterone, and everybody knew that. But it was just kind of like weird looking back that they approved of this, and yet there's no actual like thing for me to like transition to. Like you can't transition to like the third gender or a third gender because it doesn't exist.
Well, yeah, but
Yeah.
I understand somebody wanting to do this on their own dime, right? And saying, I just don't want
Hmm.
these things around anymore. Take care of them. But you went through all these other steps through
Yeah.
psychologists and
Hmm.
college ideology and the
Yeah.
entire system. Did they pay for it or did you
Hmm.
pay out of pocket?
They paid for it.
Okay.
Yeah. Medicaid considered it a medical necessity.
A medical necessity
Hmm.
under what pretense? Of your, were you going to
Um,
kill yourself if you didn't become this thing? Or what?
I was like crazy because that's the whole thing is that they acknowledged that I had trauma, like, similar or related to this type of thing, like on, like the therapist, like knew about that. Like they knew about what happened with my friend. Um, but yeah, it is kind of weird because like the thing is like you're supposed to be emotionally stable, but you're supposed to do this like because it's a medical necessity. So why would it be a medical necessity if it's not for severe mental illness?
Yeah.
It's odd.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Have you gone through all their reasoning and looked at all their notes and stuff?
I mean, I've looked at the notes, and I probably can't talk too much about it since I have a lawsuit, but yeah,
Okay,
I have looked at it.
so you've convinced at least a lawyer or a group of lawyers that what was done to you was unjust and can be proved to be unjust in a court of law. So you're not just, it's a crazy thing, but you think that through the law, it can be proved that this was abuse or negligence or malpractice at the very least.
I think I don't know how much I can talk about it,
But
to be honest.
that's the argument that you're making.
Yeah, that there was, I think it's like malpractice,
Okay.
pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah.
By the whole system. I just wonder, and not
Yeah.
to your case specifically, but one thing that does need to happen is what you're doing now. Detransitioners need to prove and hold accountable the people who are doing this, insofar as the people who are doing this are not doing good, insofar as they're
Right.
harming people. And who needs to be convinced of that is ironically the medical industry, and then all their boards,
Right.
all these professional organizations that purge themselves of any people who criticize this, right? They need to be raked over the coals. I don't know how far any given case is going to go, but
Right.
we'll see.
Exactly.
Are you mad? Are you angry? Are you baffled? Like, what's your emotions towards what's happened to you?
Oh, yeah, it's I mean, I feel like it's a lot of things. I mean, there's a lot of sadness because it's a loss. Like, I don't have my breast anymore. Like, I can't fit a dress the same way again. Like, I can't breastfeed. I can't, like, it's impacted my dating life. There's a lot of loss there. There's some shame. There's a lot of, like, confusion because, like, and I think too, it's just like being wrapped up in that ideology. It's taking me a little while to be like, oh, like, this actually doesn't make any sense at all.
Okay.
Like, it's like it took me a while to be like, wait, like they transitioned me to something that doesn't exist. Like, why did they do that? And why did they consider it a medical necessity? Like, the whole thing is very odd, for sure.
Well, were you excited to get this surgery done? Like, what was your emotions leading up to it?
Yeah, I thought this was really going to help because I'd done all this treatment up to that point, and I thought that, okay, well, this is it. Like, this is going to help me. And it's sold as this idea in general that it's going to help. So I thought this was going to help, and I was excited for it, but it's like then it's just like, I remember when the doctors took the bandage off, I just, like, had this really mixed feeling, like I should be happier than I actually am. And I said I liked it to the doctor because I was like, I wanted to make her happy. Yeah. So it wasn't like, like, I was almost thinking, like, she did all this work for me. Like, I should thank her for it. So it was, it's just, the whole thing's just surreal for sure.
And when did you start to notice that the house that you were living in, ideologically speaking, wasn't real or wasn't stable? Like, did you?
Yeah.
What thread did you start to tug?
I remember, I think part of it came down to, I mean, it started when I noticed the dogmatic nature of, like, call-out culture in women's studies.
Okay. And
so, like, it started there. But then it's just, like, I still couldn't get, like, I realized that there was an issue with the ideology, but, like, I was still trying to undo the kind of the toxicity within the framework. But the problem is that the framework's the issue, not you can't like
Well,
it's
how
just like
did you get
it's
outside or see the framework for what it is?
yeah. So that was kind of the start of it, and then from there, so Black Lives Matter happened, and then I just saw like Portland be destroyed, and it was like, which is like that's probably a nice way of putting it, but it was just like graffiti, fires, like like not being able to go into Portland at certain times, like because they did like almost like I think it was like, well, that might
Martial
have been
law.
COVID too. Yeah,
It
it's
was
just like
COVID
the
too,
whole
yeah.
thing. It was COVID too. Yeah. So it was just like I was like I felt like I was insane because I'm like, well, I think racism is wrong, but my city's being destroyed. Like this is not helpful, and this is like millions of dollars in damage, and
Yeah.
and just I just like it was just being destroyed. And I was talking to a therapist. I'm like, I feel like I'm insane. Like, you know, this is wrong. And she was a little bit more conservative, thankfully.
Huh.
And she actually said, you know, here's Jimmy Dore and here's Tim Pool. Why don't you just go and watch them for a little while?
Oh,
Just like go
okay.
check them out. And so then I started watching Jimmy Dore, I started watching Tim Pool, and then from there I saw The Quartering recommended to me, and I'm like, oh, who's this Quartering guy? And so then I started watching The Quartering, and
Uh-oh.
I started watching, you know, let's see here,
Mein
Cindy
Kampf.
Watson, and like just like, oh yeah, I know everywhere. Like everybody thinks that he's like a Nazi or something, and it's like
Everybody's a
he's not.
Nazi. I'm just saying,
Everyone's a Nazi, right?
you started down that alt-right rabbit hole or whatever. So,
Yeah.
what was it about these commentators, these content creators, their view on
Yeah.
life that you found interesting, fascinating, strange, addictive? What was it about them and your state interacting with this media?
Right. So I felt like that I couldn't go back to women's studies at this point, like that sort of culture. Like I say
Okay.
women's studies because that's what started it, and I feel like I guess I can say woke. Woke would probably be the best way to describe like that sort of like all encompassing sort of toxicity and that I was experiencing. But I was like, I knew I couldn't return to that. So I was like, well, I'm going to like listen to these other people because I don't belong there anymore. So I was like politically homeless. And so then I started listening to these people. And then I was like, oh, okay, like you can still, like, I think Actual Justice Warrior helped a lot too. Like I was listening to him and he was talking about like, he would say like, or he would just like kind of give the facts rather than that, and look at things objectively rather than, well, saying that, kind of like the idea of like, all black people are innocent. It's more like, well, it's more complicated than that. There are some black criminals, but there's like, but that doesn't mean all black people are bad. So that's
Yeah.
kind of the thing that I was getting, which I couldn't really say before. So yeah, it was, being introduced to those different ideas helped me. And then realizing too that when I'm watching these people, I'm like, oh, these are human beings. And I've been told my whole life, because I was like pretty liberal where I lived, that Republicans are these horrible, horrific monsters and, rotten people. So it
Yeah.
was like very different than what I was expecting, for sure. And it helped widen my view on things when I was watching them.
And being surrounded by a liberal area and thinking less than liberal thoughts, maybe one could say, or at least less progressive thoughts, probably more
Yeah.
liberal, in fact. But did you have a group? Oh, did you have social interactions? Did you have to reset that? Or did you just wall
Like,
yourself off?
yeah, it's just kind of like weird. I have like one friend who's woke, and so like I kind of like just find like she doesn't really know like that I'm, like center right now. And so it's sort of like I'm kind of like walking on eggshells around here. I'm like, it's just like I remember telling her, just to kind of give you an idea of like the woke ideology of that I said, you know what, I'm a detransitioner. And she said, oh, well, that was part of your gender journey. So
Oh,
like
yeah.
me removing my breasts was a part of my gender journey. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Wait, so
So I mean that's the
you
thing.
weren't offended by that?
I was a little bit like, but I was
Huh.
like, it's sort of like one of those things where it's just like I can't remember what I said to her. I was just kind of surprised, but also not surprised because I'm familiar with cognitive dissonance and how like that was her way of being like, well, this is how
It's
we
all part
keep
of
the
the plan.
ideology afloat.
It's all part of your
Yeah.
plan. Yeah. Okay.
Hmm.
Divine
Yeah.
providence, aka your gender journey. Huh.
Yeah.
But that means that you can't be open with her.
Yeah.
So that friendship. So do you have intimacy? Have you been able to find a way to have intimacy?
Yeah. It's the thing is too is that that relationship was kind of not doing great even before that. So
Yeah.
I think too, it's just, she's struggling with mental health issues, but she just wasn't really available. So it just wasn't, it's just not a relationship I think that I can necessarily repair,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But, yeah, I mean, I've told a couple other people, like I told a friend of mine and she responded to it well. I know she's more left leaning and, my family has responded to it well. I know, like I told, like, I have a family member I told like
Wait,
that,
responded to what well? That you're a detransitioner or you're
oh,
a
that I'm
Nazi?
detransitioner.
Okay. Okay.
Oh, that I'm detransitioner. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
no, not that. But yeah, they responded well to that. I mean, my brother was like, he didn't want me to go on Tucker Carlson. Because he's like, I don't want you to associate people with like that. So,
Okay.
I mean, there's that.
Did you?
But I mean,
I'm
I
sorry.
did.
Okay.
Yes, I did go on
Are
Tucker
you? Are
Carlson.
you? Is your brother still talking to you, or does he not want to be associated with
Yes,
people who are associated with Tucker Carlson?
I think you'd be okay. I need to tell him, but I did not tell him yet that I was on Tucker Carlson.
Wait, when were
I
you
was
on
like,
Tucker
oh,
Carlson?
I was on Tucker Carlson.
When?
Oh gosh, when was it? It was like a few weeks ago.
Okay, and you haven't told your brother. He's
I
gonna
haven't told him
he's
yet.
gonna Google your name someday, and it's gonna be the most
He's
hated
gonna
man in
find out.
America talking to you. You chumming up with the denizen of
Oh,
the fascist party. Oh,
oh my
jeez.
gosh, the Nazi.
Oh no.
Oh, yeah, Camille's now a Nazi. She's talked to Tucker Carlson.
Wait, what format was
Yeah.
it? In his like wooden podcast room, or was it on over tele?
It was oh my gosh, it's crazy. So I went there's like a studio thing and like you sit there and you actually like look at like this black, it's like old black. It's like this camera and it's just like a black screen sort of thing and you don't see Tucker Carlson at all. Like you just see like this camera and
Yeah.
you're giving like an earpiece and you like listen to the audio and then you respond to them based on the audio. It's like this really surreal experience for
It
sure.
seems kind of backwards. Like there's very minimal expense on just setting up a mirrored pane of glass with the broadcast of
Yeah.
Tucker. Was there at least a little googly eyes above the camera?
No, no googly eyes.
Oh,
That might have
wow.
made it a little easier. But
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, I was so nervous, but yeah.
How did you get through that?
I messed up the first part, but like then it's just like I like kind of like was able to regain myself and I got the second part right. So
Okay. And
yeah.
what was your message, or what was Tucker wanting from you?
Just to talk about the lawsuit. And so then I just said, that doctors shouldn't be influenced by ideology, and that had they treated the underlying issues, then I would have never needed the surgery.
Okay.
So,
Okay. So at what point did you realize that you made a big mistake? And how did you look at that, see that,
yes.
and deal with that?
So I realized that, let's see here, about a year and a half after the surgery.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I
when was this
was
about
able
relative
to
to our position in time now?
Oh, so that would have been probably March of 2021,
Okay.
around that time, maybe a little bit before that.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, I had realized as I was able to handle it, thankfully, somewhat okay because I had like really worked on my like physical health and then my
Okay.
mental health had stabilized.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
so like I was still, and then it's like since then it's just more been like kind of like weird stages of grief because it just sort of like it hits you kind of in different stages. Like it doesn't just hit you at once, or at least it didn't for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
Yeah.
just it's been weird, but it's sort of like I think it was more like I don't think I'm non-binary. Like that was kind of like the first thought. And
Okay.
I mean, I had kind of worked with one of my bodywork practitioners around gender before, so I kind of like maybe even had a little bit of an inkling, like back in like late 2020, like probably around August 2020. But then it wasn't until 2021 around March that I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm non-binary. That was like, no, I'm not non-binary.
Okay.
So,
Which means that you're a woman.
right.
What
Yep.
does that mean to you?
Being a woman,
Yeah.
it's just, oh, that's like, what is a woman, right?
Yeah.
Um, oh gosh, like it's like, it just kind of like fits into place, if that makes sense. Like it fits into place. It's just, it's like a biological and I don't know, it's just like it's like, I don't know, maybe, I don't know if that makes sense, but it's just like everything like fits into place.
Huh.
Like it's just, and I know like, I know like there's going to be a whole bunch of definitions. And I mean, there's like women's studies back in women's studies, they would tell me that it's like gender and sex is different. And, but it's, I don't know, I guess the best way I can describe it is just like it fits into place and that it's not, I'm not having to like compensate, because that was the thing like when I was non-binary, is that I was always compensating for being non-binary, but I'm not having to compensate for being a woman, because that's, for me, that's something that's innate to who I am.
Okay. So as a woman, what's your job in the world? What are you supposed to do with your life?
That's difficult to think of, because like I know like for different women it's going to be different.
Well, for you though,
Yeah.
accepting
I
that
mean,
we're moving forward. What do you
yeah,
want?
I mean, I want to have a family.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. And at least for me, I think part of it's like there's a certain strength in nurturing too that comes out of my womanhood. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you have any nieces or nephews? Do you get to hang out
No,
with babies at all?
I don't, like, not anymore. Like back, I mean, I have family, but they're just nowhere near us for sure.
Oh, okay.
And it's like
Yeah.
we have family back in, I was just thinking about it. I was like, I don't want to say, it's just, it's probably best given my how
Yeah.
polarizing things are,
Yeah, yeah. But I'm just wondering, do you get a chance to hang out with families and hang out with kids?
Yeah. Yeah, I miss that. Like I grew up and my grandma, who we called Mimi, because she didn't want to be called grandma because it would make her seem old. But
Okay. Yeah.
she, like, that was so important to me growing up, because like we'd always go and see her, and it was just like it's this nice big family thing. And I think I was like a little bit different because like I wanted to be with the boys and like play video games. And so like I don't know, I didn't fit neatly into that woman box. But it's like, and maybe that was part of it too, was that it's okay to like diverge a little bit from the traditional roles, and you don't have to do anything drastic for it, like adopt a whole new identity or anything. So
Yeah. Yeah. Every detransitioner story is different. You went into this NB zone, which is like, what are you becoming? So coming back from that and just being a woman, you don't have to deal with the effect of exogenous hormones, hair loss, hair
Yeah.
gain, redistribution, stuff like that. I know that it can be a struggle for some detransitioners because they have to face the fact that, well, I'm basically going to be a man now as a woman. I'm basically, in all intents and purposes, women aren't going to want me in the women's restroom. People are going to call me sir. I'm just going to have to accept this. So, what do I do? That just being in that, well, what do I do with the position that I'm in now? You don't have that necessarily. You just have to accept the loss of your woman form to a certain degree and go forward with your life. So, have you searched out support from detransitioners? Have you sought to interact with the detransitioner community? Not that it's a community, but have you found help and friendships in that to co-help and to co-process?
Yeah, and I think that like connecting with either other detransitioners have helped with kind of the process of too like understanding like what's happened to me and also realizing that I wasn't alone because I thought that I was like the only one. And when I talked to other detransitioners, they're like they thought they were the only one. So there's this sort of feeling of isolation, and then it's nice to connect with other detransitioners who are like, oh no, this happened to me too. So
How
that's
did
really
you come
helped.
across them?
I did an interview with Buck Angel.
Yeah.
And then after that, I decided, like, I felt comfortable enough to reach out to, like, I think I reached out to GenSpect at that point. And so that's when that everything started happening was that I felt confident enough that I'd been, out, which is kind of a weird word to say as a detransitioner. But I felt like that I was ready to reach out to GenSpect and kind of connect with them, and that's kind of like where things started.
Yeah. So I know that one project under the umbrella of GenSpect is this thing called, and I have to say it like this, Beyond Transition, but they call it Beyond Transition, but every time they say, I have to say it like that. Are you involved in that? And which is just facilitating people, whether they're trans or detrans or whatever, who've gone through certain steps in transition, just giving them help from therapy to yoga workshops, stuff like that. What do you think that has helped you most with coming back to yourself, accepting yourself as a woman, dealing with your health issues that you think could help other people? What are some of the tips and tricks of navigating this?
Yeah, so I didn't really reach out. Well, I did talk to Beyond Transition, and actually, I think that. But what's really helped me and kind of like what I want to do is to help detransitioners get access to like holistic health treatments.
Okay.
Because that was really what stabilized me and allowed me to deal with realizing that, I've been a woman this whole time and that, non-binary was like a coping mechanism.
Huh.
And so like getting them the help, like especially like a lot of them aren't able to function well because they're dealing with all these health issues from testosterone or from these surgeries. And so, that's really what I'm trying to work on right now. I don't know if I would be a part of a subcommittee under like, an organization that's established. I'm looking into working with Detrans United to help other detransitioners. So
what's Detrans United about?
So Detrans United is a nonprofit by detransitioners for detransitioners, and they're, from my understanding, it's going to be really focused on the educational aspect. It's like really in the beginning stages right now, and so that sounds like that's the direction they're going to head in, though.
Okay, so holistic health is. I don't know what to think. I see a basket of fruit and then fruit flies and then, something rotten at the bottom. So what is that holistic health? Like, what is that? Where do we start with that? Like, what's the foundation principle? What do you mean?
Yeah, so holistic health, and I wish that there was kind of like a good term for it. Like, I mean, there's like, because there's conventional medicine, which is where all these issues came out of. And then you have kind of functional medicine doctors, and then you have like naturopaths. And so that's kind of like the alternative to that. Functional medicine does use, I feel like not that naturopaths don't use medications, but functional medicine is, I feel like, got a more concrete like idea of the body, perhaps. I don't know how to best
Okay.
describe
What's
it.
functional medicine? Like what? Like
Yes.
osteopathy? What do you mean?
Oh, I'm not sure like what category, like if it would be under osteopathy.
I mean, what
I'm
does it
not too
do?
sure.
What kind of practices are they practicing?
So like I would bring an issue with my doctor, and they would say, okay, well, you can try these supplements. So it's actually kind of similar to a naturopath, but I feel like they
Okay.
have more of a medical background
Okay.
than the naturopaths, perhaps. Like there's something like naturopaths feel like, very earthy sort of thing. Like not that they're not educated, because I mean my naturopath was talking about like how it's good that GABA didn't work for you, because then that would mean that if it did, then that would mean there's an issue with the blood-brain barrier.
Yeah.
So they know of things like this, but it's hard to describe it, because like I mean I saw a naturopath um, through like like I feel like functional medicine doctors you would probably see at a hospital. So to kind of give you an idea, like it's a different approach. I feel then like it's more of a whole body approach. Maybe
Okay.
that's the best way to describe
Okay.
it.
Okay. So in
So
terms of
yeah,
detransition, what
right,
kind of ideas or mindset and then practices that
right,
fall under this huge umbrella of holistic
right,
health you think
right.
you'd like to offer?
Yeah, so I think one of them would be diet. Diet's huge, like cutting out processed foods, including seed oils. Um, you know,
Is canola
eating.
a seed?
I think it is. Yeah,
I
I
thought
mean
that.
they always
Okay.
put it they always put it in the seed oil category. So I think that it
Okay.
is a seed.
Because I eat for
Yeah.
breakfast, I eat herring in canola oil called kipper
Uh-huh.
snacks. And they
Hmm.
taste really good. I drain the oil. I don't just drink the whole oil, but I mean,
Right.
it's been bathing in oil. So I just wonder if I should get like the olive basking herring for breakfast, or
Yeah.
if, I guess I'll just have to check in with my holisticness.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Probably olive oil.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, part of it too is that they were saying that was processed, and that it's like you're getting higher amounts of like, I think, what is it, the omega-6 or something. Like it just like, I was like listening to that. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to cut it out. Like it, and I like animal products anyway. So I'm just going to cook in bacon grease. So,
Oh,
I
okay.
mean, and bacon grease makes everything taste so much better. So it's
It's
just like, it's a
almost as good as
win-win.
butter.
Yeah. Oh
So
yeah. Yeah. And butter
that
is
close.
amazing too.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, yeah, so I mean diet's huge. I had no idea that diet played as big of a role as it does in my mental health. So and I mean some people have to go to the point of like carnivore to kind of get that needed, like to be where they need to be mentally.
Yeah.
And I think too it's just like foods cause inflammation, and then it's just like people go onto that extreme diet because they can't figure out what's causing the inflammation.
Okay.
So I
Yeah.
think that's why you have people like Michaela Peterson, like I mean, I guess she tried everything, but that's kind of the idea of like some people just respond well to carnivore.
Yeah.
I think that's a whole discussion around like how we've changed the process of food over time, like how we process things also causes an issue or can cause an issue as well.
Yeah.
So,
Huh.
there's diet. There's circadian code's another one I heard of, like, kind of intermittent fasting, like eating, and kind of like I think circadian code, like I think mostly they talk about diet, but I think that might include like, you go to bed at 10 sort of thing, like that might help people.
Huh. So just be a human
You know,
being.
just be a human being. Yeah. Oh yeah, like, when you're doing circadian code, like you don't like snack all the time, like that's one thing. But I think that like in all these treatments I'm going to be talking about, or approaches I'm going to be talking about, it's like it's not going to work for everybody, so
Yeah.
people just kind of need to experiment. But yeah, that's kind of the idea behind circadian code, is that you eat, like you have like a 10-hour, 10 to 10, like 12, maybe 8 to 8 to 12 hour time frame where you're not eating. So like you eat your dinner, you have 10 to 8 hours or 8 to 10 hours, and then you have breakfast, and then maybe lunch in there or something. But it's just like you're not eating, snacking in between.
Yeah.
Like I didn't really notice that much with doing circadian, like the circadian code idea, but that's one. I mean, people respond well to Wim Hof, but certain people respond well to Wim Hof better than others.
Wim Hof?
Are you familiar with Wim Hof? Wim Hof? Are you familiar with Wim Hof?
Have you met
Okay,
my
so
Lord
Wim
and
Hof.
Savior? All these words I've never heard of before.
So Wim Hof is like this.
Is it
it's
Wim
insane.
Hof or Wim Hof? Is it like German
Wim
or
Hof.
Chinese?
Oh, he's like he's Scandinavian.
Okay. Wim
Yeah,
Hof.
so
Okay.
Wim Hof, yeah.
Okay.
So pretty much he was it's insane. Like he would go and he would like go to the mountain, like and walk up this like icy mountain or whatever in his like shorts.
Yeah.
And then he would and he was able to be fine. Like his temperature was fine. Like he's able to regulate his temperature. And then he did like the same thing of like they put him in an ice bucket and he was able to regulate his temperature for like over an hour.
Okay.
And like it was like I think it was like I can't remember how many degrees. It's probably in Celsius, so I don't know. But I think it was like 86 degrees Fahrenheit, if I remember right. I don't know. Whatever his temperature is, he was able to regulate it for over an hour. And then, kind of my favorite is that, so they decided like to take his blood and to put, what was it? I feel like it was like I think it was E. coli in the blood. Like so, they just took a sample,
Okay.
and then they put E. coli in the blood.
Now, this is turning
And his
into
blood
the
was-
plot of a Marvel movie. Okay, go on.
And
Go on.
and his blood was able to fight it off.
Okay.
So they're like, well, if your blood was able to do it, can we inject you with E. coli? And so then they injected him with E. coli, and like he got like a light headache, but then he was able to fight it off.
Okay.
Like they measured him, they took his vitals, and then they're like, well, you're just weird. Like that's why you were able to do it. And he's like, give me like 10 people and I'll train them to do what I just did.
Okay.
So he did. He trained
Plot of
them.
a
He
Marvel
did like
movie. I know. Okay.
yeah, right.
Go on,
And so
super soldiers now. Okay.
right.
There we go.
Super soldier. And so then he like trains them. They go up to the mountain or whatever,
Yeah.
and they do their ice stuff, and
Well, they start
and
killing
then they
people
come.
indiscriminately.
Well, yeah, of course, right. And so then he comes back to the hospital, or they come back to the hospital or whatever, and they do the same thing that they did to Wim Hof, and everybody that he had trained was able to fight it off.
Okay. Okay.
And so, yeah, so there's something to what he's doing. He does like ice baths and he does like breathing.
Okay.
And he's been able to like, he's able to like get into his autonomic nervous system somehow.
Oh,
So-
he's hacked his immuno system thing. Does he have a diet too, or is this the ice bath guy?
This is the ice bath guy. So
breathing.
I don't think he does any sort of diet stuff, but
Okay. James
yeah.
Lindsay was talking about, I think it was about the same thing. I'm going to have to inject James Lindsay with some E. coli, see what happens. Or Ebola? What, E. coli or Ebola?
oh, I
think
it
it's
was
a big
E. coli.
difference, isn't it?
Yeah, I feel like it's
I'll have
E.
to look
coli
into that before
because-
injecting anything into James.
Yeah. But yeah, so there's Wim Hof, and then let's see here. So Wim Hof, the diet, body work, which has been really helpful. Like I've seen
massaging
people
or like rolling around.
massage
having
is a form of
somebody
body
touch
work.
you. Okay. Yeah.
Yes. So massage is a form of body work, and what but there's different types. Like I remember seeing this video, and this was like my first introduction to all this holistic stuff, was that this guy had this like knee pain for like years, and he does like a 2-hour session with this PDTR practitioner. And by the way, I don't know what PDTR is. I can't remember. It's like tendon reflex or something, but it's just like, it's like tapping and stuff. But he does this 2-hour session with this guy, and he's tried all these different things, right? So he's tried everything else that he can think of. Within the 2-hour session, his knee pain goes away. And so then he like it's like with a lot of these people, then he starts getting into all this holistic stuff because it's like, oh my gosh, like this is amazing. So then I was like, I'd watch these videos of like people like they do acupuncture or neural acupuncture in particular, and then like they have they start speaking again, or they speak a little bit better or something. Like usually it's progress. Considering like it's not like overnight sort of thing, like maybe their speech gets a little bit better, or maybe like their MS symptoms improve. Or like, and I didn't realize like scars cause issue. Like there's this boy, and it's like, again, the PDTR, they do this muscle testing and stuff. And they find that, well, it's the scar that's causing all these issues. So they work on the scar, and then the boy's muscles like react like how they should be reacting. So it's really.
What do you mean work on a scar?
Like they like, I've seen tapping, like I've had scar work done where they actually like massage the scar and stuff. And then like some people, like when they do scar work, like they'll get feeling back in that area after the scar's been massaged. So it's really interesting, like just there's all these different types of body work, but on the most part, a lot of them can achieve the same thing, like even though like it's a different modality. And then some of them are more effective than others. Like I remember, like, have you seen that cartoon cat that like, or like the dog in the cartoon cat, and the cat's going like this, and the dog's like, ooh, 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 ooh,
Like,
do you know what I'm
massage?
talking about? Like it's like a
Well, my
Looney
cats
Tunes
do that
cartoon.
to each other all the time. They just need each other, right?
Right. But it's like that. It is called myofascial release.
Oh.
And it was so painful.
Yeah. Okay.
I think it really helped, but it was so painful. And I was talking to another bodywork practitioner, and she's like, yeah, there's better myofascial release techniques out there.
Okay.
So
then putting a cat on your belly and letting him go to town with a bunch of, just cover yourself in catnip and just have the cats like go at your scars and stuff.
Well, not necessarily a cat, but like a person acting like a cat, like needing you. Yeah, she was like needing me. I'm like, oh, why? It's so painful.
Oh no, okay.
It helped, but I would not recommend that form of myofascial release for sure. Like there's better things out there for sure.
Yeah. So I guess the overarching theme then is just, I guess Wim Hof is more mastering your body, but these other approaches are about just attending to your body and being in your body, just paying attention to your sleep, your food, becoming connected, just being more connected to what you are, and let the who sort itself out.
Yeah.
On its own.
Yeah, and then the other one too was, I guess, really brief, was hyperbaric oxygen therapy, was where you receive pure oxygen in a pressurized environment, and that one was amazing because I went from like a 72 on the self-report scale, and after 60 treatments, I went to like 6.
Oh, the self-report of what?
Of ADHD.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so and then for my anxiety, my generalized anxiety disorder went away, and I went from severe to moderate to mild anxiety.
Okay, so let's briefly extend that. So how many treatments, and then how long has that lasted? Do you have to continually get high on oxygen to maintain this effect, or is it kind of aerating your brain in such a way that you're able to move forward?
So I feel that on the most part, it's been pretty stable. I've done treatments since then, because I did 60 treatments, and then I've done like 10 more after the case study. So like I've done about 70 treatments. And the reason why I was doing those treatments was to try and help the insomnia, because like everything, like my generalized anxiety disorder has gone away. My ADHD is much better. I talk much more fluently and much more articulate since doing the hyperbaric oxygen therapy treatment. But so my insomnia would go away when I did the treatment. But when I stopped the treatment, my insomnia came back. So that's really the only thing that has like been an issue since I stopped the treatments.
Huh. So it seems like for most of your life you've been concerned with fixing yourself. It seems like a lot of man hours have been put into you.
Right.
What do you do going forward? Do you cross the threshold where you go into the world, you do something in the world? Do you want to is that the natural process of gaining all this therapy, doing all these routines? What do you do with a healed self? What do you do with a not broken person?
Yeah, so what I really want to do is just bring awareness to the holistic treatments that helped me, because I had spent all this time, money, and then money was spent on me to get me better, and through this conventional medicine that just wasn't very effective. And then it was really until like, I mean, I just did like pretty much 2 years of these holistic treatments, and that was what I needed for my mental health the whole time.
Yeah.
So I didn't need to spend all these years on talk therapy and stuff. I mean, I think talk therapy is good in the sense that like if you have like a blind spot, maybe a therapist can pick up on it. But doing 20 years of talk therapy isn't effective. Like that's not a that's not an effective way to like deal with mental illness. Because too, I'd had like the skills, so I had all the skills. I just what was missing was that physical health component. But since what happens in our culture is that we were like, well, you have these mental health issues, like you must see a psychologist or you must have medications, versus like, well, maybe the mental health issues stemmed from this like physical health issue. Yeah. And maybe we don't even know that you have a physical health issue, because they found out later after the surgery that I had high inflammatory markers. So like I had issues with inflammation, but nobody had checked me for that before the surgery. So I really want people just to like, and I don't have the answers. Like I'm not a scientist, like I'm not scientifically minded. And so it's like kind of like weird going into this kind of like this kind of like holistic health, like having interest in that sort of thing and wanting to spread awareness around it. But I just really want people like doctors and like, you know, to look at this and be like, okay, well, here's some things that we can do for our patients that are more effective, more cost effective, and then, you know, just provide a better quality of life for our patients. So that studies, doctors having a better understanding of like how to help patients, that's really what I want to help do now that I'm feeling better.
Yeah. And you also have a YouTube channel that you're producing on. What's that about? What are you concentrating on over there?
So I talk about the holistic health stuff, and then I talk about being a detransitioner. So that's kind of my focus there, and it's called the Get Better Researcher. And yeah, you can find me on YouTube.
And going forward, what are your plans for 2023 with regard to the channel, other projects that you're invested in?
I mean, with 2023, I definitely want to I want to work on the channel for sure. But I also am finding ways that I can get involved and help other detransitioners and, you know, get involved, you know, with, you know, kind of ways to like help with that. And so that's I'd say that's pretty much the focus around that.
Yeah. Cool. Anything else you want to plug? Your Twitter? Do you have a Substack?
I have a Twitter, Substack. You can find, like, I have all my links. That's, you know, you can find on, like, my Twitter, and then I think it's on my YouTube as well. But, yeah, all my links has all the different things that you can find me through.
And all my links will be where all the links end up on all of my programs, which is in the description. Check it out.
Yeah.
Camille, thank you very much for your morning. Is it as rainy for you as it is for me?
It's like a little dreary outside, actually, but
little dreary.
It's Oregon.
Yeah, it's Oregon. The last note that'll end the recording. I was on Twitter and somebody was like, "It's been raining for 5 weeks. I feel like it's COVID all over again." I'm like, human beings are kind of water resistant. People are walking all the time around me. Like, there's no reason to not just get over it. So, are you able to suffer the rain, or do you just hole up?
I'm probably one of the weird ones, because it's very, like, the traditional garb of Portland is to have a raincoat. Um, but
You just wear
I have an umbrella.
oilcloth? Oh, umbrella. Yeah.
Yeah, I just usually wear or not wear an umbrella, but I usually have like an umbrella with me because I don't know, like I went to Japan and I got umbrellas and I'm like I love umbrellas now, and so I'm just like the weirdo like with an umbrella in Portland and everybody's in their like Columbia sportswear jackets, and so that's how it is.
I've never. You're the first umbrella fetishist I've ever met. I'm so. I love to end on that
Yeah.
note. That's a wonderful little
Okay.
factoid about you, Camille.
Okay, great.
Great.